Are we at that
So
point in our lives where there's like the 90s nostalgia tours where it doesn't matter if the genre is even remotely the same? It's just like, yeah, they were a successful group in the 90s, put them on.
stop. You're not allowed to talk like that. You're fired.
And speaking of us getting old, it's been remarked on a couple of times that we are children of the 90s, and that means that according to some people, we are busted and old. So we thought, what a better thing to do than to focus on those 90s characters that were so prevalent in the comic book industry. So, by the way, in case I forgot, which I totally did forget to introduce us all, you're listening to Smark Avengers. I'm Corey, and with me are Dylan and John.
Hi.
Hello.
So, well, real quick before we go into anything, John, what's your movie count at?
So last time I sort of guessed what it would be, and it turned out I was spot on. So I'm like
Hey,
339 for the year.
well done. We're getting close to that midpoint.
Yeah.
What is the record for most movies you've watched in a year?
Oh, it's about 1,051 or something like that.
All right, you're not on pace for that yet.
No, I'm getting up to June as well, where I'm going to be doing stuff, basically going to festivals, going abroad, going to gigs, and
Yeah.
so that's gonna slightly throw me off course even more. So
You know, it was easier.
Corey's gonna watch the films for you and then tell you what happened.
Yeah, I'll tell you what happened.
perfect.
In regards to going back to the 1990s, um, that was sort of a beautiful period of time in comic books where there was just a lot of stuff getting put out. And we've talked about it a couple of times before, but the major emphasis of that was somebody sold an original copy of Action Comics, that the debut of Superman, and made several millions of dollars. So because people are rational, normal human beings, they didn't just see well, I mean, it's the first appearance of Superman. It's from the 1930s, which at that time was like 80 years ago. Like, of course, that's going to go for a lot of money. They then started to think that every comic book was eventually going to go for that much money. People started to buy out stock in comic book stores. And the publishers absolutely went with it. Like Death of Superman sold millions of copies because people thought, like, oh, they're really going to kill Superman. And so, like, you got the black little bag. The issue came inside of a black plastic baggie with like the bleeding Superman logo on the front, and like you can see copies that people still have them in that black bag because they bought so many copies thinking they were going to put their kids through college in it. Real quick, I'm going to actually pull up eBay and I want to see like how much a Death of Superman comic goes, because I feel like that is.
John, we're gonna have to place our bets. What do you think?
Oh, geez. I'm optimistic. I'm gonna say it's going for $150.
So, we're talking in the black bag, right?
In the poly bag.
Okay, you said 150. I was gonna just off the bat just guess 75.
All right. Well, here's the thing. So they put out a platinum edition version of it. That one's going for $200. But that's a platinum version edition. I am seeing $10, $20. This one's $60. I don't know why it's $60, but it is. And these are just what people are asking for. So these are people who have it on hand, and they are not that optimistic about what they're going to get in return for this. So they're going $20.
So I was closest, really.
Yes. So I think actually what it might be is that they put out a 30th edition, like 30th year anniversary edition of that is like going for like that $20 mark, because it was just like a special thing DC did recently to honor that storyline. But like, yeah, I mean, I'm seeing people who are requesting a lot of money for it, and I'm seeing people who are not requesting a lot of money for it. So that's kind of an example. People really thought that these comics are going to be worth a ton of money, not realizing that value is based off scarcity.
How much?
So,
incidentally, how much does it cost to send a child to college in America? $20?
My niece goes to the University of South Carolina, and I think her tuition was like for the year, maybe I think just maybe the semester or the year was $80,000.
Okay,
Holy mother of God.
That's
Yeah, that's why John, that's why our country's in the state that it is in.
I
we
don't think
monetize
that's
education.
why. I don't think that's the reason.
I don't know. We say we monetized education, but yeah. So college is pricey. So oddly enough, the cost of college actually increased, and the value of the comics did not increase in return. Because it didn't used to be $80,000 to send a kid to school. That's for damn sure. Yeah.
Maybe
So
we just need to wait another 80 years, and then that comic could be,
right.
you know.
Yeah.
And like in 80 years' time, nobody's gonna go to college. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
It won't be a planet anymore.
yeah, we'll all be dead. So
Well, I'll be dead.
it'll be worth loads.
Yeah, this will be just a husk of a meteor just floating around in the sky or in the space.
All the space aliens are gonna come on. We're like, wow, look at this little comic in the black bag. It looks rad as shit. I will give you 60 glip glorps for it. I don't know what their currency is. I'm gonna just guess. I don't know what their currency is.
So
Yeah.
so because
Anyway.
there was this so because there was this big boom in like people buying all of these comics, it afforded a lot of really interesting opportunities. A lot of those opportunities were like, well, we have all of this money, people are buying all of these books, there's a demand here, let's start making a bunch of other books. And so that's where you start to see stuff like they're really weird and eclectic that's kind of well known, like the James Robinson Starman, like Vertigo's Sandman, like Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol and their Animal Man. So like a lot of really cool arty books got made, benefiting from the fact that there was just so much money to throw around, and they were just like, "Fuck it, they're buying everything. Just keep making stuff. Doesn't matter." So on the opposite end of the spectrum, when it comes to all of these books that were really unique and eclectic coming out, there was just a lot of just stuff coming out, and it was stuff that was sort of like cashing in on what the subculture was at the time. So the new generation of these characters that were introduced in the 90s, or they were rehashes of traditional characters, they all had a lot of things in common. More often than not, they were snarky and cynical and kind of dark and gritty. Like anti-heroes became like a huge thing. And we talked a little bit about anti-heroes in our characters we find overrated episode, because we talked about Venom. Venom became a huge fucking deal in the 90s. There are certain little items that you could call out as like, oh, that's a very 90s character. So I thought it would be fun if we dedicated a whole episode of talking about 90s characters. So to kind of give you guys an idea of what I'm looking for, when I think of a 90s character, I think of somebody who may have been drawn by Rob Liefeld at one point. And if you do not know who Rob Liefeld is, listeners, Rob Liefeld is sort of the artist who became like the touchstone of comic book art in the 90s for some reason. And he's characterized by women having unrealistic proportions, people having just random lines on their face, massive, unrealistic-looking guns, and a not really wanting to draw feet.
Yeah.
Like that was a huge thing with Liefeld. Is like he would find a way not to put feet in his pictures, and if he did, they were like weird little diamonds in the background that you like. Characters are always running forward, so their feet look small. So other things were leather jackets, sunglasses, spikes, and or really unconventional and impractical weapons. And am I missing anything that you would think of as a like you would characterize? Usually it's like the cooler version of another character.
Yeah. Just like cool and dark.
Yeah.
You know, broody, mysterious, but also cool, so he can inline skate. You know.
Yeah, like the rollerblades.
Yeah. But also he's got a mysterious past.
Yeah, and he's got big guns.
Yes.
And knives.
Yes, guns and knives attached to themselves.
He probably listens to 9-Inch Nails.
Who doesn't?
So we have all gathered around and put together a list of characters that we define as very 90s. And I am not expecting a lot of depth and granular breakdown of most of these characters. because a lot of these books, and this is another kind of spoiler for the comic book industry and what happened to it in the 90s, a lot of these books flopped real hard and almost blew up the industry because the bubble eventually popped and people stopped buying a shit ton of comics for the sake of trying to put their kids through college.
Which, in retrospect, is a really stupid reason to buy comic.
Speaking of choices, we'll jump in. I think we all have like more than 3, so we'll have some honorable mentions if time allows. Does anyone want to go first?
Can I get the obvious one out of the way first?
Let's get the obvious one out of the way.
Cable.
Yep. Everybody knows Cable.
Me and John were like, we're pretty confident we know exactly who the obvious one is. So if we get the answer right, we'll make a noise. And
I didn't even put him on my list because he was that obvious.
My list for a long time was just the word Cable. But then I was like, well, you know who else was incredibly 90s and goes along with Cable?
Strife.
Well,
I was going to say Deadpool.
One of you is correct. Strife is basically Cable, so you know.
Oh, he's a clone of Cable.
We've already name dropped him, but yes.
He's a clone of Cable, but he's covered in impractical body armor.
Yes, and but he's the same, except he doesn't have a robot arm, so he's not as cool.
He has full access to his powers,
but he's not as cool because Cable has a robot arm and shit tons of guns.
Have you seen what his robot arm can do these days? He's got like an AI in his arm that takes on the form of like tattoos, and they talk, and the AI talks to him. So it's like this little like buxom lady on like a torpedo, like talking to him. It's so fucking weird.
I hate comics now. I don't want to. Yeah. So I said I went Cable Deadpool because they make a good sandwich together, but also Deadpool's an incredibly 90s character to me because he's also like, you've got the guns, you've got the mysterious backstory, which when they tried to make it less mysterious didn't quite go so well. He's got the swords, he's cool, but also he's got that very 90s kind of like snark to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's really annoying, which is a character trait that I don't think a lot of people realize is like very 90s. You know, for example, we watched Generation X. A lot of those characters were very 90s and very annoying.
Yeah, it's that sort of irreverent attitude about things, like things being ironic, being cynical. That was another staple of the 90s Generation X slacker stereotype.
Yeah, all this shit that you see in media that when you look at it now, you're like, this is really stupid and I don't like it. And not that I don't like Deadpool, obviously I do, but you know, on the flip side, if you were in the world of comics, you would find Deadpool dreadfully annoying.
Yes.
Just unbelievably annoying.
And most characters do.
Yes. I mean, they to this day, they still do. So he's always seemed like a real big, like, 90s character to me because of not just the guns, but also, like, that snarky attitude.
Well, and this goes back to point number 1, invented by Rob Liefeld, same as like the adaptation of Cable that we all know.
Yes.
So here's something about Deadpool. I'm not sure if you guys know or not, because I know you're not huge DC people. Do you know how Deadpool came into being?
Yes.
Basically, Rob Liefeld wanted to make, he wanted to be over the Teen Titans book, but DC would never let him. So when he jumped to Marvel, he just made his own Deathstroke, the Terminator, and that's Deadpool.
Yeah, because his name's Slade Wilson, right?
Slade Wilson.
Mm-hmm. And then what did he name Deadpool?
Wade Wilson.
Clever stuff.
The creative depth that is Mr. Liefeld's writing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And people wonder why his work at Image Comics didn't stand up to the test of time.
Probably political correctness. That's what it was.
Probably. So this
all
is
those, all those woke people. That's what did it.
Yeah. Liefeld is a guy who became a punching bag for like the worst of like 90s comic stereotypes and stuff. And yes, he did play into a lot of those and is responsible for a lot of them. I almost feel kind of bad for like jumping on him for it, but I mean, you know, the whole like, you won't let me write Teen Titans so I can make Deathstroke? Fine, I'll make Deadpool, and his name is Wade Wilson.
But it's different. He's a different guy.
Yeah, totally
Different
different guy.
shark.
Well, and again, a lot of Deadpool's characterization comes from writers and creators after Rob Liefeld too. So,
Hmm.
like, Deadpool was just kind of meant to be like this mysterious mercenary that he didn't really get a lot of his like more notable stuff until afterwards.
Feel like we didn't really touch on one of the most important factors which make them two of the most iconic 90s characters as well,
Which is
which is the sheer number of pouches they both have on their costumes.
absolutely.
Pouches. We forgot to mention that.
Well, we pouches have come up previously because it was my favorite thing to joke about on Scarlet Spider, and when we were talking briefly on the Scarlet Spider episode, is he has ankle pouches.
Yeah.
So his pouches are wrapped around his little feet.
His little feet.
Little feet.
His little baby feet that Rob
But
Liefeld can
yes.
draw.
Yep.
Mm.
So we got so yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. They are covered in pouches. Cable has the largest shoulder pads ever known to man. Faces that are just covered in lines. It's astounding. Absolutely astounding.
Well, that's Deadpool for you.
And Cable.
Yeah.
That
I
was a
like
good
Cable
2-for-1
too.
though.
I do like Cable, but like there's definitely some examples of early Cable artwork where you're like, what the fuck is this?
Well,
Mhm.
yeah, and it's like, how does this anatomy work? Because he'll have like a tiny head, and then like he will be built like a barn, like just
Yeah.
broad shoulders and tons of muscles, and you're like, he couldn't wipe his own ass if he had to.
But then he'll have like just this stupidest looking gun. Like this
Yes.
insane looking fucking tank on his
Yes.
shoulder that
And
he's
they
just
look
holding
nothing
there.
like a gun.
Yes. And you're like, what the fuck is it? What am I looking at?
It's astounding, like the whole what can you get away with that is not technically a gun?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's wild. Some of
Cable
those guns
has it.
were. Oh boy.
Anyway, that's my pick.
Cable and Deadpool, that's starting strong. That is starting
Mhm.
strong.
Well, we had to get it out of the way.
We did. Um, John, do you want to go next?
Okay.
Cable.
Yeah.
Strife.
I will say for my first one, a gentleman by the name of Marshall Evan Stone the Third,
Oh dear.
who you guys might know better as Random,
Okay.
who's like a
Okay.
big white-skinned mutant with a red bandana, always wearing sunglasses. His arm turns into a massive fucking gun. Um,
Yep.
yeah, I mean, it doesn't get much more 90s than that. I think he was a bounty hunter as well when he was introduced. So, like,
Because he
what can you
kind of like
say?
changes forms. It's like you said, his arm can turn into a gun. So also
Yeah,
his arm could probably turn into like he doesn't need pouches because he can just turn into pouches.
basically, yeah.
Yeah. So
Apparently, his skin is some sort of protoplasm, which kind of,
Sure.
yeah, can transform and change shape and whatnot. So,
Mhm.
why not turn into
Yeah.
pouches?
Yeah. So that way, he's got the guns, he's got the pouches covered. Does he have a
He's wearing a leather
mysterious
vest.
backstory? You fucking right, he does. Nobody knows where he came from.
Exactly.
Bingo.
The first sentence, if you go to his Wikipedia page, is the complete origin of Random is unclear. Boom. Checked it off on the list.
That's it. Mysterious backstory. So mysterious they couldn't even be bothered to come up with it.
He showed up in the Dark X-Men miniseries they put out about a year ago, and he was in one issue, and he basically fucked off. He was just like, I don't want to be part of this anymore, and he left. Like, all right.
Understandable.
Hey, do you know that Random was ranked 91 on the Let's Rank Every X-Men Ever list from Entertainment Weekly in 2014?
91's
What?
pretty good considered that there's like 400 X-Men.
Yeah,
I didn't even think he'd actually been an
be on the
X-Men
list.
as well.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they counted X Factor. That seems to be the case.
I mean,
Uh,
he does have a big arm gun, so pretty cool. He's a cool guy.
hmm
How could we leave him off the list?
Cool bandana. I think he's got a 5 o'clock shadow too. Jesus Christ. Save some pussy for the rest of us, man.
Well, the thing about that is, right, if he can shapeshift, he would just like shift his face to have that.
Yeah, right?
So he could just be clean shaven if he wanted to. Be like, no, I'm just gonna have the lazy ass fucking look, you know.
I don't know if there's anything else you want to say more about Random.
Is there much more to say about him?
I don't think so.
Not a whole lot, to be fair.
I think that's honestly the kind of thing that's in common with a lot of these.
Yeah,
Is that there's
they
not
just
a lot to
exist.
say about him.
They just exist. Honestly, like I've read a couple of stories around him in it. He's never really been like the main focus. He's just kind of there. He doesn't really have a whole lot of like, and you know, sometimes because they have to try. God loves a trier, but it doesn't always hit the mark because you're like, well, why would I care about this guy? Like, what is there to care about? It's a weird design all around, you know. But I feel like that was to our point. That's kind of like a '90s thing as well, where they're just like, well, let's just try shit. You know, like you said, it was a comics boom, so they're like, well, we'll just try stuff then. People will buy it. People love X-Men. Here's some fucking weird X-Men, right? And
Yeah,
good lord, there are some plenty of weird X-Men.
I think there was more effort put into trying to make him look cool than actually like making a cool character, like giving him enough of a personality to be cool.
Yeah, which again might be like a '90s trait where they're like, you know, the design is more important than the execution of the idea. So keep that in mind for the rest of this list.
Yeah. So I will because that's kind of my kind of thing to do is I like to bring the world of DC Comics into play. You guys know who Dr. Fate is, right?
Yes.
Vaguely.
You
Pierce
saw
Brosnan.
you saw Black Adam. You saw Pierce Brosnan as Dr. Fate.
Did I?
I did, unfortunately.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah,
What do you
you
mean?
know the look, the helmets, and the big yellow gold cape and blue bodysuit and stuff.
Yep.
I want you guys to do me a favor. Look up Jared Stevens' Fate. And if that doesn't do it for you, you might want to just put DC Comics in there as well, because the 90s was a transition period, and DC had an idea of how to make Dr. Fate cool for the 90s.
Wow, he does look cool.
Right?
Whoa, look at this guy.
Ooh.
Yep. When I first thought of this list, this was the first name I thought of. So the famous Dr. Fates were Kent Nelson and Inza Nelson, and they were like sort of these like wise ancient sage. Jared Stevens is just a smuggler of artifacts. He's just a criminal. And in the process of trying to steal a bunch of shit, he gets mortally wounded and he gets possessed. And in return, he has a glowing Ankh shape over his right eye to show the symbol of order within him. And so he didn't like the helmet and he didn't like the cape of Dr. Fate. So he just wrapped the cape around his arm and it became like this thing that he could use to manifest weapons and stuff with. And the helmet he melted down and made knives and throwing stars. What makes him a 90s character, aside from they just took like a very old concept? Because Dr. Fate's from like the 1930s and 40s. What makes him a 90s character? Well, he has a cool red streak in his hair. That's cool. He's the ankh over his face is like a face tattoo. That's cool. He wore T-shirts instead of like a superhero uniform, and some of his T-shirts said things like "Buy it, fanboy," and "It should have been Ringo," which I thought was really mean-spirited towards Ringo Starr.
I find a picture of this guy where he's smoking a cigarette,
Yep.
which is cool, and he has a T-shirt on that says "Eat quiche."
Yep.
So
it's that irreverent sense of humor that the 90s were known for.
Pretty fucking cool. Also, he's snarling into the. Well, I was gonna say into the camera, but you know what I mean. He's looking at the. Oh, and he's got two earrings in one ear.
Yep.
Cool guy.
He's the coolest, right?
And
let me tell you, this is how you know he's a great 90s character. Jared's personality was one of stubborn defiance. He resented authority and being told what to do. I mean, I don't need to read the rest of this description of him. The quintessential 90s character. They
Yeah.
took a tried and true tested character that had been around for, I think, close to 50 years at that point, completely disregarded everything, put all of his powers onto a 2-bit criminal who was an asshole, and just made him super cool and badass. Did you see the cover for Fate issue #1 where he's snarling and has no lips? That's another 90s art thing for me.
Yeah, they
People
love
weren't
a
allowed to have
snarl.
lips.
Yeah.
Moving forward. Dylan, we're back to you.
Wow. This is where my list starts to dip off considerably.
Mm,
I want you guys to look up a character called. No, you're gonna have to write the word Marvel after this in Google, okay? Because first of all, he's got a really awesome 90s name, which is Bloodshed. So you have to write Bloodshed and then like brackets Marvel close brackets. Otherwise, if you just write Bloodshed, you're gonna get some unpleasant images.
I see so many spikes.
Right. Look at this guy, right? Doesn't he just look like he was from the 90s?
I just saw a panel and he just says, "Call me Bloodshed Ricky." Or
Yeah.
Bloodshed Ricky. Who's Ricky?
Ricky, I think is his brother.
Oh, man.
Yes.
Dylan, what would you do if your brother came to you in this costume and he was like, "Call me Bloodshed, Dylan"?
Be like, well, I support you in whatever it is you want to do with your life. If this is what you're into these days, then you know we're still family and I still love you. So that's fine.
I support you.
Yes. But also it's kind of weird.
It's kind of stupid.
You gotta admit, calling yourself Bloodshed, like, are you gonna go and kill people? Because I don't want you to do that. I don't want you to get in trouble.
So what's this? What's Bloodshed's deal?
That's an excellent question, Corey. I assume you want an answer for that question.
I would love one, if it were possible.
Well, what if I said he had a mysterious backstory and then moved on?
That's all we got to do then, huh?
He's one of those guys, like you said, where like they kind of brought him in, and like, look at him, but there's no real substance to him. He was a Spider-Man villain, but he just looks like a regular Spider-Man villain. He was involved with like the mob somehow, and he was like an enforcer or like a guy that would, you know, beat people up to get their money back.
Yeah.
So he had to like, he ended up like testifying against the mob to protect his brother Ricky,
Mm-hmm.
I think, and then Spider-Man had to help protect him, which I think probably could have been a good storyline. Like, they've done something similar to that before, where you're like, this guy's a bad guy, but no, he needs Spider-Man to protect him because Spider-Man's got a good moral code. He has to do it, kind of thing. But you're like, well, who gives a shit about Bloodshed, right? Fucking who cares? Kill him, you know? So he's got durable skin that's capable of deflecting bullets and other stuff. He has super strength, and he's got retractable bladed weapons on his suit. So
yeah, of course he has blades.
Knives, no guns, but knives. So that's still a good, still a point for him.
So I think what we should do is we need to call out when we go over these what year they came out in and who was responsible for creating these characters. AKA, they should be shamed a little bit.
Oh, okay. So have you found Bloodshed's information?
I have found everyone we've talked about so far. So we'll start from the top. If we count Cable as Cable and not as Nathan Summers, the baby, Cable's first appearance was in 1990.
Okay.
And Louise Simonson and Rob Liefeld were credited for creating him.
Yes.
If we go to Deadpool is 1991, though it technically came out in 1990. Mm-hmm. And they were created by Fabian Nicieza and Rob Liefeld.
That's two. We're shaving him twice so far. Yep. How many more times will he be on the list?
It's hard to tell.
6.
We'll go with Random. Random first showed up in 1993, and they were created by Joe Quesada and Peter David. And we have Fate, who came out in What year was this? This was 1994, so far the latest one. And he was created by John Francis Moore, Anthony Williams, and Andy Lanning.
It took
All
three
right.
people to create that guy.
Yeah, it took 3 people. So in Bloodshed is 1991 by Kurt Busiek and Stephen Butler.
Classic lineup.
Yeah. So is there anything else about Bloodshed that you would feel
I
like
think-
discussing?
Honestly, we got more to Bloodshed than I thought we were going to.
Fair enough. All right, John.
Okie doke. Well, for my next one, I can't give you his real name because apparently he doesn't have one. So I'll just say Sugar Man.
Oh,
Sugar Man.
Sugar Man.
The weird, grotesque, like giant head for a torso with 4 arms, including one which has like a heart tattoo with the word sugar written across it. And he's always wearing suspenders for some reason. I mean, boy, howdy, this guy is 90s.
Sugar
Trying to
Man's the
describe
best.
Sugar Man is like the most impossible thing in the world.
It really is. You
Yeah.
don't really. I mean, we found the thumbnail art at least.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's gonna be a picture of Sugar Man.
Just a comic
100%.
panel of him, not even a drawing.
As soon as you said Sugar Man, I'm like, yeah, that's it. I'm drawing Sugar Man.
Oh boy! All right. So when did Sugar Man first make his appearance?
1995 in
That was-
an issue of Generation Next. Yeah, this was during the Age of Apocalypse crossover. And yeah, he was like a bad guy in the Age of Apocalypse. Like some.
Well, he's not gonna be a good guy.
If you would have to-
What? He
Yeah.
likes sugar. He can't be that bad, surely.
Does he?
I mean, so he was created by Scott Lobdell and Chris Bocciolo.
And he was one of the
Um,
few characters that they brought over from the Age of Apocalypse into
Right, he made the cut.
616. Yeah.
All those
Like,
characters.
we
he
like
made the
this
cut.
guy so much. We gotta keep him around. We gotta keep the most grotesque monstrosity that has ever been put on Bieber. We gotta keep bringing this guy back. He's too funny, you know.
Why not?
To Sugar Man, every time I see a picture of him, he usually has some kind of weapon in his hands. So like that's a
Mhm.
point for guns/knives. I don't know about pouches. He clearly has a mysterious backstory, so that's another point.
Hmm.
You know.
I think his weapon of choice was a hammer, actually.
I thought he had hand axes.
Oh, yeah, he might have done.
he just hits people with a hammer.
Can I? All right, I saw. Oh boy! All right, I when I'm pulling up Sugar Man, because Sugar Man was a character that I saw the action figure of before I saw anything else, and I went, "What the fuck is this guy's deal?" I'm like 7 years old or whatever, just perplexed.
Look at his happy face.
Yeah, he looks delighted to be there.
Look at his happy face, which is like 90% of him.
It's like 90% of his body. He's just a big face
He's
with arms
just-
and legs sticking
Yeah,
out of
he's
it.
just all face and arms. Oh boy, Sugar Man was a great call. That was
Yeah,
a
I'm pretty
great
proud
pick.
of that one.
Yeah, that's so good. I always find Sugar Man to just be one of those characters where you're like, it's fascinating and also like, it's just impossible to look at. You know,
Mm.
like you want to know more about him because you're like, what the fuck? But then also you don't want to know any more about him
No.
because what the fuck? You know.
He's like technically considered a mutant, so it's like, did he always look like that, or was he somebody who, when they got their powers at their teenage years, that's what they turned into?
Yeah, because he experiments on people, right? So like, did he experiment on himself? Did he willingly turn himself into that, or did he accidentally do it and go, well, this is what it is.
This is me now.
I guess I'm now Sugar Man. You know.
I don't want to judge a book by its cover as well, but he doesn't really
can't.
look like a scientist to me as well.
I mean, you can judge a book by its cover, John. That's fine.
He's got massive teeth and he's always grinning and like sticking out a massive tongue and
He
stuff. It's like,
does. Yeah.
what kind of science is this guy doing? I'm not
Well,
sure
I think
trust it.
I think it's pretty clear from his visage that it's bad science he's doing. He's doing
nothing
bad
good
science.
is coming from this.
Do not
Sugar-based
trust that
science.
scientist.
So it's becoming quite frankly apparent that there's going to be a lot of X-Men characters on here, and I swear it's not because like all three of us are big X-Men fans.
Oh, we're doing
It has-
X-Men again.
Yeah, pretty much. But what it comes down to is like the 90s were like the heyday of the X-Men. So there's just a lot of X books coming out, and they were just doing all sorts of fun, weird shit. So that's why there's so many X-Men characters turning up here. And I say that because my next character is somebody who I've joked around a lot about, but it's Adam X or Adam X the Extreme or Extreme, who is so 90s it's in his name.
But with the letter X.
Yes.
Extreme.
Mm-hmm.
This is important. This you guys don't remember that, but this is a very important thing that happened in the 90s, where people would just use the letter X.
Yes.
A lot.
A good bit.
Yeah.
So Adam X the Extreme, he sounds like such a Mary Sue character. So
what
hey,
I like about him, he's
what?
Adam X the Extreme, like the Extreme what? Like no.
Yeah,
Just the Extreme.
So Dylan, we're gonna check off some boxes. Mysterious past.
Yep.
He is literally covered in blades.
Bingo. That's a knife.
He wears a backwards baseball cap, even though it does not go with any of his. Doesn't go with anything he's wearing. Just a backwards baseball cap.
That's another point. He is Poochie.
Well, and so all right, so Adam X was created by Fabian Nicieza, Greg Capullo, and Jeff Johnson, and he first made his appearance in 1993. He was, and we've mentioned this before. He was intended to be the third Summers brother, with his mother having him with Deacon, the Shi'ar Emperor, who is Lalandra's father as well, and he was supposed to be the heir to the Shi'ar throne, and stuff happens, and he gets stuck on Earth, and his mutant powers are still so fucking wild to me. Basically, the reason Adam X the Extreme walks around covered in blades and throwing knives and like little hand sickles and stuff is that his mutant power is he can basically light your blood on fire, but he has to be able to see it first.
That's one of those powers where you think, like, how did he find this out to begin with?
How'd you acquire that knowledge?
Yeah. Well, also, wait. So he burns people's blood?
Yes.
I mean, that's a very...
That's not all of his powers though, because most 90s things are you have to have way more powers than that.
Oh yeah.
So I'm gonna real quick: agility, fire control, heat generation, stamina, super hearing, super sight, super smell, super speed, super strength, swordsmanship, tracking, unarmed combat, and a weapon master.
Good.
Yes.
So he's like also, Pyro and Wolverine.
Yes. And also Shatterstar with his multiple swords.
True.
And he's got his cool baseball cap on, and he's got cool little braids in his hair too. He's just the coolest. We all love Adam X the Extreme.
Does that baseball hat give him powers like Mighty Max?
It does not give him the Mighty Max powers. However, I would have enjoyed it much more if he had like a wise old chicken man with him.
I know, right? Oh, and awesome.
Oh, that's a deep cut.
And they never explain it.
No,
it's just he's there looking like a badass, and then there's this weird talking chicken thing beside him, and it's like that's just part of it.
Yeah, that's just part of the deal.
Only when he turns the hat backwards.
Yep.
You know?
The chicken man only appears when the hat's backwards, and his hat is always backwards. So
yeah, so the chicken man's always there, and he's really annoying. So that's another point for the 90s thing. We should have written this guy. I actually was gonna put that guy on my list, but then I remembered you talking about him, and I also think he was maybe the catalyst for this episode.
He was.
You were talking about him, and then you're like, "We gotta make an episode about them." So I'm like, "All right, Corey's gonna talk about him. I'll talk about Deadpool instead."
There you go. John will talk about random.
We should talk about Sugar Man.
And the Sugar Man.
Sugar
Man. Jesus Christ.
I feel like Sugar Man's gonna be the new mascot of the show.
Well, no, he's perfect. He's perfect for the team up with Armless Tiger Man because Sugar Man has 4 arms. He's got enough arms.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they both have big teeth.
Yeah, and they're both responsible for the upbringing of Baby Juggernaut.
It's
my two dads with a twist.
The mother and father. Baby Juggernaut, Armless Tiger Man, and Sugar Man are a family. Just
Yes.
I want to make this super clear, and they're all three of them really are probably the mascots of this show.
Yeah, at this point, at some point, we're gonna finally get an official logo, and it's just gonna be the three of them.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop drawing pictures of us eventually and just start drawing pictures of Juggernaut.
Do you remember back in the day when the cover of like the X-Men comics would be like the heads of the characters that were on the team at the time?
Yeah. Yes.
We need to
Oh, we
incorporate
should do
that.
that.
It'd be like Armless Tiger Man, Baby Juggernaut, Sugar Man, but Sugar Man's gonna take up a big chunk of it because he's all head.
He's all head, so it's just his entire body, basically.
Yeah.
Can I talk with Sugar Man again? He's awesome. All right, I wanted to listen. Even though 90% of the ones we've talked about so far have been X-Men related,
Yeah.
Bloodshot was it, I guess. Bloodshed? I already forgotten his fucking name. That's a bad sign. Bloodshed was Spider-Man. And then Mr. Fiat, or whatever is it, Dr. Fiat? Fiat?
Just
Whatever.
Yeah, he was fake.
He-
He didn't have his doctorate.
No, well, look at him. He doesn't need a doctorate. Look at him. He's fucking cool as hell.
Yeah, he got kicked out of school at 16.
Well, he's a bad boy is what he is.
Yeah.
You know, mysterious backstory.
Oh, I like how you said that. He's a bad boy.
Yeah, well, he is. He's he's got a 90s attitude, but
Yeah, he's got that in-your-face attitude the kids love.
because he's Poochie.
Exactly.
Everybody on this list is Poochie. Cable equals Poochie.
Yes. Cable is known to disappear back to his home planet every now and then. So
Now I've changed the thumbnail art. Now I want it to be Cable equals Poochie.
just Cable dressed as Poochie.
Has amused me significantly. But I'm gonna go back to the X-Men real quick because as Corey covered, what the fuck, right? You know, in the X-Men, it was a novel idea at first, and then people were like, well, we'll just make loads. There was a point where they were just like, let's make loads of characters who have cool powers, you know, and then you got loads of, you know, plenty of X-Men that came after the original 5. And then at some point in the 90s, they were like, fuck, we ran out of all the powers. What do we do? So they created Maggot. Are you guys familiar with the mutant known as Maggot?
Yeah, they actually just put out a
yes.
Maggot action figure.
What?
Yeah. I'll send a link to you. You keep going. I'll send you a picture of it.
Oh, every time you send me a picture of something, it's Sugar Man levels of bad.
I thought you like Sugar Man.
I do, but as I've covered, it's hard to look at him. He's got a weird face, and by extension, rest of body.
The rest of him.
You know, but Maggot was a 90s X-Men character. I believe he was introduced in 1997, so he might be the latest one so far, I think. If my calculations are correct, which they frequently aren't. I already know the whole story of Maggot is something that Magneto found him and then helped him, and then because he did that, Maggot was indebted to Magneto because of a mysterious backstory. And his power was first of all, his skin was blue, right?
Yeah, it has nothing to do with anything else.
No, fucking no reason for his skin to be blue. Second of all, because you might think, well, maybe the blue skin relates to his mutant power, right? Well, his mutant power was he had 2 big slugs that would just like eat stuff, and then they would go inside his body. So
Yep.
Of course.
that's his power. So obviously, when the slugs eat stuff, and they went back into his body, that would give him like a boost to his strength because, you know, whoever created Maggot obviously didn't stay in school. He got kicked out because he's a bad boy and didn't realize that slug ingestion doesn't equal whatever the fuck Maggot is. And none of that makes any sense. But that's pretty much it. They introduced this guy. He looked weird. He had a weird power. And that's another case of them not knowing what they're supposed to do with this character. Because you introduce a character like Maggot to the show, like he's got such a very specific mutant power that you're like, well, how do you work this into the story? it's one of those things where like if you've introduced a guy this specific, it's either because A, you have a storyline in place that you're gonna tell, or B, you just got bored. You just thought, I'll just write this. This will be funny, you know. And so because of that, it was really hard for Maggot to actually do anything. He didn't really stick around. I think they did bring him back like for Krakoa because that was that gimmick. Yeah, like fucking everybody else came back, so here's Maggot. But again, like he couldn't really do anything. So he doesn't have any knives or guns or pouches. He does have a mysterious backstory. He does have a fucking mental, inexplainable, weird power, you know.
So
And I was thinking he wears sunglasses, so like that's pretty cool.
Yeah, he's got sunglasses. So here's two
Yeah.
fun facts about him, real quick. So 1997,
Yeah.
created by Joe Maduria and Scott Lobdell. So I think it's our second Scott Lobdell appearance of the day.
So.
And also, the maggots had names,
They
Eenie
did.
and Meanie.
Correct.
Yep. I sent you a picture of the maggot action figure, by the way.
Oh, thank you for doing that. Of
Oh, wow.
Did you see it?
Yeah.
Hey, I gotta say that looks way cooler than any picture I've ever seen of Maggot.
Yeah.
I do really like that that action figure. How much is it? Let me see. $25.99. That's a steal. Look how happy he is. You guys can't see this. I realize this is an audio show where the people listening can't actually see what we're seeing. Maybe Corey will put that into the show. I don't know. He probably won't. It won't make any sense if you listen to this on Spotify anyway. Just Google it, right?
Mm.
I don't want to be that guy. Just like, oh, just fucking Google it. But seriously though, I can't even describe it. He's like a big, tall, blue guy with like he's got to be strong guy, kind of tuft of hair in the front.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got a big coat and 2 slugs. That's it. But he's got a big smile on his face. He's a happy boy.
So I want to know if his little insects are slugs. Why is he called maggot?
Right. What the fuck? That doesn't make any sense. That's not what a maggot is.
Yeah, they're two different creatures.
And it's never the slugs are never described as anything other than slugs or like slug-like.
Mm-hmm.
They're never called maggots. Why didn't they just do that from the beginning?
It's a good question.
Doesn't make any. It's a mysterious backstory. See?
I guess. Yeah. There we go.
Yeah, he's a mysterious guy. So that solves that problem. I like how whenever there's a problem in any of this, we can just say, "Oh, mysterious backstory."
It's a mystery.
Ooh, and then we get away with it completely. You know, some people will call that bad writing, but not us on this show. No, sir.
Just leave it for a future writer to fill in the blanks for us.
Or a future writer will kill off Maggot and forget about it.
Yeah.
Which I think they did. I think he died. All right, I've had enough of talking about Maggot. Let's move on.
All right, John, are you next?
So I thought I'd break the X-Men theme for a little bit, only because I was going to do Maggot as well, and Dylan beat me to him. So I'm gone for Phil Ulrich as the Green Goblin.
Yes.
Which
we talked about him on last week, didn't we?
We have talked about him
a little
before.
bit, yeah.
Yeah.
I think we talked about it a little bit in the Cyclops episode.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But the thing is, it's just such a weird concept to me, like bringing back the Green Goblin and like trying to, I guess, rehabilitate the name for some reason. Like if you'd stumbled upon one of Harry Osborn's goblin hideouts and all of this goblin equipment and stuff, you wouldn't think, oh yeah, this is a good idea. I'm going to be a superhero called the Green Goblin, and everyone's going to trust me and love me, and it's going to be great. Like, no,
right.
The Green Goblin was a crook who killed people and killed Gwen Stacy.
He had a bit of a reputation.
Yeah.
The
costume is pretty sexy though. Woo.
I mean, yeah. They had the whole like sort of topless look with the ripped pants, I guess, or
little loincloth.
Yeah, it's kind of wild looking.
He was like, "What if I was the Green Goblin, but also kind of slutty?"
Yeah, but it works for him. Well, I say it works for him. His
I don't
series
know.
only lasted 13 issues
I mean,
before
Yeah.
getting cancelled.
did he impregnate Gwen Stacy with twins? I think not.
Thankfully.
Well, as we've established, none of the Osborns did.
Phew.
So
Oh boy. So yeah, this kind of John, it just does seem like it's an example of like, well, I mean, it's the 90s. What can we do?
Yeah.
but the very idea that they would go the Green Goblin, who has been Spider-Man's like arch enemy for what 40, 50 years now. We'll
mhm.
make him a good guy, and we'll pick a guy that the audience barely knows, and then we're gonna give him his own fucking comic.
Yeah.
Like, how did they think that was gonna go, other than being canceled in 13 issues? 13 issues, by the way. There we go. Got lucky that they got that.
Yeah. And that would not have gone 13 issues these days. I don't think the Red Goblin series got that much.
Mm.
And that was Norman Osborn, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
No, that
this
was
was
His
Normie.
kid.
yes. Yeah,
Who's
yeah.
basically, I mean, that's his name is basically Norman Osborn. So I would count that, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man, because I read some of that stuff too, and I was confused when I read it. It just, I didn't understand it. Seemed like such
Like
a weird.
one of his powers as well was it's called a lunatic laugh, where it was like a sonic attack where he just laughed maniacally and it would hurt people. Like,
Yes.
how is that like a good guy kind
Yeah,
of
right.
thing?
But also, he was the only goblin that could do that.
Yes. Was that? I think that
How?
was only through. Was it through his mask or?
It was the mask.
I think it was through the mask, yeah.
Well, and I know in the original run it was through the mask, right?
Yeah.
Because when he got rid of the mask, he couldn't do it anymore. But then when he came back as the Hobgoblin, he could still do it. So
Oh
you're
yeah,
like,
that's
oh,
true. Yeah.
okay, so both the Green Goblin, but he stole Harry Osborn shit. So Harry Osborn's Green Goblin mask could do it. He just never did. And then Roderick Kingsley's Hobgoblin mask could do it, but he never did it either. Like, what? Why was he the only one that could do that?
Can I tell you something that's going to bother you both immensely because I know how you feel about this character?
Is it about
Go
Sugar
for it.
Man?
No, it is unfortunately not. In 2021's Screen Rant included Phil Ulrich in their 10 best Marvel legacy villains who lived up to their predecessor. So apparently he did just as good a job as both Kingsley and Norman? Is that what it's
No,
saying?
no. They're talking about him because he was a good guy when he was the Green Goblin. So they're
Yeah.
talking about him as a legacy villain being
As
the
Hobgoblin.
Hobgoblin.
Hobgoblin?
And I
Yeah.
think me and John can both agree on the fact that he was not a bad John Roderick Kingsley as,
Hell no.
as a Hobgoblin. No fucking way. Not even close, man. Didn't Kingsley kill him? Like,
Yes, if I'm not
fuck?
mistaken.
Well,
So this
how
was
can he be as good as that guy that killed him? Like, come on now.
so this was Terry Kavanagh. This is a first and I'm going to assume only appearance of Terry Kavanagh on this episode, who created the full Ulrich Green Goblin. That's so strange, like for them to go like, oh, we'll try to do a heroic Green Goblin, and when that didn't fail, fuck it, villainous Hobgoblin.
Yeah, but we're gonna keep it being a goblin
Yeah,
because
so you're gonna.
that's the shit that worked. You know what I mean? Like in their
So he
head,
has
like, well,
been
he's definitely goblin.
he's been a Green Goblin, the Hobgoblin, the Goblin Knight, and the Goblin King.
Yes.
Yeah. He's got his
And
money's worth.
I just
thank
have to say that costume is still fucking wow to me. I didn't know this was a thing that happened, and I'm just looking at it for the first time, going, "Wow, that was a choice."
let's
Yeah.
move on away from this guy.
All right, so remember how I said in some of these, it's an instance of like, here's a character that was like a cooler version of an existing character. So like, some people would say Venom is the cooler version of Spider-Man. Well, then in the 90s, because Venom had already been established, they were like, what if we made a cooler version of Venom and we made Carnage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Following my path on this one. So in the 90s, Howard Mackey got the Ghost Rider series, and he created a whole brand new Ghost Rider in Danny Ketch. And like the Ghost Rider looked entirely different because Johnny Blaze's Ghost Rider was wearing like a motorcycle like stuntman outfit. So the Danny Ketch Ghost Rider was like leather jacket covered in spikes and chains and shit, like really hardcore, really 90s. But I'm not talking about Ghost Rider. I'm talking about Vengeance. If you guys know who Vengeance is.
He sounds scary.
Yeah.
All right. So Vengeance is another spirit of vengeance, as the name would suggest. And Vengeance's deal is that he was tricked into thinking that Ghost Rider was actually Zarathos, who was a demon in hell, may or may not have been a Supreme Lord for a cup of coffee, Dylan, to follow up on a previous episode.
Strong guy.
Yep. And Zarathos killed this guy's family because Michael Battolino is Vengeance. So he killed all of Michael's family. And he's the only person left. So he got this medallion of power that he was able to activate and make himself into this demonic force known as Vengeance. Now, I've described what Ghost Rider looks right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mhm.
Vengeance is covered in even more spikes than Ghost Rider, and he's like bigger, like muscular wise than Ghost Rider, and he's got bones wrapped around him, and he's like the flaming skull, but his flaming skull is purple and it's got these long fangs and this mohawk made out of bones, and yeah. And so he started as an anti-hero in Ghost Rider because he believed that Ghost Rider was actually the evil demon that he was after. And then eventually they would team up together. And to kind of give you an idea of how fucking cool he was, there was a mini series of Vengeance teaming up with Venom. And yeah, they're really cool. And he ended up dying, and they brought him back to life, and I think he died again. So there you go. That's Vengeance. So Vengeance died was like 1993, and that was also Howard Mackey, Ron Wagner, and Adam Kubert. His first appearance was in Ghost Rider number 21, Bad to the Bone.
Because that's how you know he's a bad guy.
Yeah. 92.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think anti-hero was a big thing in the 90s too.
Absolutely.
Boy, they love that shit. You know what I mean? Oh, he doesn't play by anybody's rules, but he's still got morals at heart, kind of. But he makes his own morals, but he won't kill children. So that seemed to be like the line, you know. A real villain would kill a child, but Venom and Vengeance wouldn't. So that's
How
why
bad can they really be, then?
Baby Juggernaut beat the shit out of them.
We've all done 3. Dylan technically did 4. We're not going to hold that against him. But we should we'll do a little bit of a lightning round on our remaining people because we don't want this doesn't warrant a two-parter. Absolutely
Christ,
doesn't.
no.
God no. So we'll just do kind of rapid fire. Name the character, the brief description of them, and what makes them 90s. Would you like me to go first to set the pace?
Okay.
All right. Villain from the X-Men world. His name is Cyber. He was an enemy of Wolverine. And Cyber was basically like, what if like we made an even deadlier version of Sabretooth? Because he had adamantium skin, and each of his fingertips were a different like weapon that could be like poison and stuff. And yeah, I got nothing else to say about Cyber unless you guys do.
He's thick.
Yeah, he has a massive neck.
I was gonna pick Cyber too, so that's a good call.
It's a good one.
Mhm.
I remember seeing him all over the place in the 90s, and then I
Yeah.
haven't seen him since.
Nope.
Because like I said, someone was just like, what if we made an even deadlier version of Sabretooth and just took away any of the things that made Sabretooth interesting? Also, mysterious past and was with Wolverine in World War I. So yeah, basically, Sabretooth.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But in the 90s.
Yep. So
Therefore,
Dylan, you want to go?
qualifies. I went for El Guapo, who I believe we've talked about before, /
Yes.
most of Ecstatic, because that whole run was pretty 90s.
It's beautiful.
Was it even in the 90s? I think it was,
No,
wasn't it?
it was like late 90s, early 2000s.
Okay, so we just about got in there. But El Guapo, so one of the things that was big in the 90s, skateboarding.
Yep.
He had a skateboard, so obviously cool. But the skateboard was a sentient skateboard, so it could like talk to him and like do stuff and move on its own. And then because the rule of Ecstatic was most of the characters would die at some point, his own skateboard stabs him in the back, quite literally. He gets impaled by his own skateboard. That's how he dies. That's El Guapo for you. I mean, he's a character that I one of my friends talk about a lot, just because of how just completely absurd it is. That this man with this sentient skateboard. He also had a hat, which I believe he wore backwards.
I've got nothing.
Right.
Like
You got nothing?
Cable and Maggot were my other two. So, yeah.
So we'll stay in the X-Men world for a little bit longer. Shatterstar.
Yeah.
He's got hollow bones and a lot of swords. He's got a mysterious past, and he can like hop dimensions. Was in X-Force with Rob Liefeld and Fabian DeCisa, who are regular offenders on this one.
Is that 3 for both of them?
I think so. If not a little bit more for Liefeld, because I got another one coming up.
Okay, yeah, Liefeld might be for suspect.
It's so far like the repeat offenders we've had are Fabian DeCisa, Scott Lobdell, Rob Liefeld, which makes sense because they were like 3 of the heavy hitter guys in the X world in the 90s. So that absolutely tracks. All right, Dylan, your turn.
I have one. I was gonna say this guy earlier, and maybe I should have because A, I wouldn't have stolen Maggot from John, and B, he's such a weird character anyway. But have you guys ever heard of a character called the Max?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so he's this big hulking brute of a guy, mysterious backstory, and he's got big weird teeth. But like, he's such a. Is this like? I think this was like this wasn't like Marvel or DC. I don't remember what imprint. I don't think he was he?
No,
or maybe he
I think
was.
independent.
The
Max had a cartoon show
Image
on
Comics.
MTV
Image
back in the
Comics.
day.
So he was just a weird guy, but like he looks very 90s. If you look at a picture of the Max, his look is very 90s to me. You know what I mean? I don't imagine this guy being created at any other point. But like a lot of those characters, it's so like it's a great picture, but it doesn't really seem to inspire a lot of good stories. Like, what do you do with this guy? What's the gimmick? What's going on here? So he got his own TV show at some point, like an animated show.
Yeah.
But again, that kind of got forgotten about too. So that's all I got to say about that guy.
So here's the real thing. This is at some point we might do an episode on like Image Comics, just because it would be wild to do and kind of how they came about being and whatnot, where they started to where they are now. But this is like quintessential an Image Comics problem. The Max ran from March of 1993 to August of 1998. It only put out 35 issues. Image got to be known for long delays, is what Image got to be known for a period of time.
Oh dear. So that's cool. John, have you got any you want to say real quick?
Spawn.
Wow, good one.
It's a great one.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean,
he is all on my own.
He's pretty 90s. You know, the look, the scary backstory, like all that shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
He's one of those guys that I feel like really epitomizes like 90s comics, but not necessarily for like the comic side of it. Just like he's just a recognizably 90s character.
Yes.
You know, again, going back to more about the look than the actual gimmick of the character. You know.
I don't know. I think there's a strong gimmick in Spawn.
I think there is now, but people don't really know what it is. Like a lot of people just know Spawn as they know the character.
Oh yeah.
They know him
Yeah,
as a
they don't. He
cool
doesn't have the
character.
quintessential like Peter Parker, radioactive spider, Batman, parent shot in an alley, Superman came from outer space. No people are going Spawn got tragically killed and made a deal with the devil.
Yeah, like I bet if you showed a lot of people pictures of Spawn, they go, "I know who that is," and then if you ask them to tell you what his deal is, they'd be like, "I don't know anything about him." You know. What do you think about that, John?
Yeah, I mean, my Spawn knowledge pretty much begins and ends with the movie they put out in the 90s.
With John Leguizamo?
Yeah. He was great as
Violator.
Yeah.
Or Clown. Both names, really.
Violator is a great name for a bad guy.
I got 2 more, Dylan. How many more you got?
Oh, I'm done ages ago.
All right, fair enough. The last two. This is a Ghost Rider villain, also from the Howard Mackie run, Blackout. He's a human demon hybrid who creates light-canceling darkness fields and has vampire-like abilities, enhanced by metal fangs and claws. He's a
Why
vampire
metal?
because he's not really a vampire. He's just part demon.
Okay. Oh,
He's got
fair enough.
something like sharp enough to punch into someone's veins. My favorite part of him is he tried to bite Ghost Rider's neck, and fucking Hellfire just came out. Because, of course.
He doesn't have a neck.
Exactly, he's a flaming skull. What were you
Yeah.
expecting to find?
Fuck. Why would you look at that guy and go, I'm gonna eat that neck?
All right, and my last one. This is the final appearance of Mr. Rob Liefeld. Have you ever heard of the comic book series Youngblood?
Yes.
So Youngblood was, again, Rob Liefeld being still mad that he wasn't allowed to write Teen Titans. So he made Teen Titans for Image Comics. And the character I want to point out is currently called Bad Rock. He's a 16-year-old boy who drank his father's mysterious serum, take that however you want, and it turned him into a giant rock monster man. So he's a giant rock monster man with the mind of a 16-year-old boy. But anyway, his name is Badrock. It used to be Bedrock until Image were worried they were going to get sued because Bedrock/Badrock's catchphrase was Yabba Dabba Doom.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And on that note, we will end our episode.
Oh yeah, leave on a high, right?
So that was our list of characters that were the 90s. As you may have realized, a lot of them had things in common, like mysterious backstories, powers that seem convoluted, leather jackets and knives or spikes, and either Rob, yeah,
An image, but like no backstory to go with it. Like a
exactly.
cool look to it, but like nothing else of any substance.
So, folks, if you have a 90s character that you think of, or if we've inspired you to look into some of these 90s characters, by all means, let us know in the comments. Remember to comment Submit or Marriage on a Limp Bizkit video today. Hopefully, I want it to like completely block up the comment section for their cover of Behind Blue Eyes. Do you think we could do that?
Well, the problem with that is if we did that, that means that video is going to get lots of views and lots of comments, and I don't think that video or song deserves any likes or comments or views whatsoever.
I had a feeling you'd have a strong opinion about that.
I certainly have a strong opinion about that. Correct.
Listen to us on Spotify or watch this on YouTube. If you're doing one and not the other, go ahead and do the other. We could use the help and support. And, we love you, and we're bringing you all of this great free Sugar Man, Armless Tiger Man, Baby Juggernaut content. We're not asking
the family you didn't
you,
know you needed.
but the one you deserved.
Exactly, it's the family you deserve, and also they're very sweet. I mean, one of them's literally made out of sugar, kind of, not really, but he says he is.
And the other one's a baby Juggernaut.
Yes, and who wouldn't like that?
I've been Corey, and with me is Dylan and John. We'll be back next week with an interesting, new, and exciting topic, but thank you for joining us. Goodbye.
Bye.